Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really cool educational approach, one that basically lets you learn two things at once, a school subject you need to know and a whole new language. And you're hearing a lot of educators talk about it like this, calling it a breath of fresh air. And there's a good reason for that. It taps into what makes students tick in a completely new way, making the whole learning process feel a lot more natural and, well, useful. Okay, so let's get into it. The approach is called Clil. That stands for Content and Language Integrated Learning. And honestly, that name pretty much tells you everything you need to know right there. So here's the deal. Clil has two goals happening at the exact same time. You're learning a subject, right? Could be history, physics, whatever. And at the same time, you're learning a new language. But, and this is the key, the language isn't the subject of the class, it's just the tool you're using to learn. Here's a super simple way to picture it. Instead of having one class for English and a totally separate one for science, students in, say, Spain are sitting in a science class that's being taught entirely in English. They're figuring out biology while at the same time getting fluent. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because you might be thinking, isn't this just a harder language class? But no, it's fundamentally different, and it all comes down to motivation. You know, in a standard English class, your topic for the day might be polar bears. And look, for some students, that's awesome. But for others, it can feel kind of random, totally disconnected from their lives. With Clil, the topic is something they already have to learn for their exams or for their future career. The relevance is just built right in. And that right there can totally skyrocket motivation. This quote just nails the magic of CILL. I mean, think about it. If you're learning how to build a wall, you are so focused on understanding where to put that next brick that you just absorb the language of the instructions without even really trying. The language stops being a thing to learn and becomes a tool to get something real done. So how does Clil pull this off so well? How does it create this environment where learning feels so natural? Well, it's all built on a few core principles that kind of flip traditional language teaching on its head. So a few things make this all click into place. First, as we said, language is just a tool. And because students are genuinely interested in the subject, they just pick up the language along the way. This leads to a huge shift. The focus is way more on fluency than on being perfectly accurate. Getting your point across is more important than perfect grammar. Mistakes are seen as a normal, natural part of learning, which helps students lose that fear of actually speaking and trying. So what's the big payoff for all this? What's the main advantage of this integrated approach? It really just comes down to being incredibly efficient. Yep, it all boils down to this number, 2. You've got two huge, important educational goals being achieved in the very same classroom at the very same time. It's a total 2 for 1. So on one hand, you're mastering your actual academic subject. You're getting the facts, the concepts, the stuff you need to know. And on the other hand, you are genuinely acquiring a new language because you're using it for something meaningful and practical every single day. So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. What Clil really suggests is that maybe, just maybe, the best way to learn a language is to get so focused on something else, on building that wall, on understanding that science experiment, that you forget you're even learning a language at all.